Inoue's really good, but is he close to Manny Pacquiao yet? I feel like I see a lot of similarities. You know, I was very fortunate enough to already be involved and absorbed by the sport of boxing at a young age. So I got to see, obviously, Manny Pacquiao do his thing. And it was amazing seeing him move up in weight and beat up every fighter that he did and beat up so many legends. And, you know, his resume is second to none when you're talking about fighting the best. So in that regard, you know, Inoue's not there on Manny's level because of, you know, there's not really opposition out there that could really challenge him. Manny was fortunate because he had a lot of, you know, big names out there. Marquez, Morales, Barrera, you know, there were a lot of huge names that Pacquiao had, and Inoue just doesn't have a lot of big names, but we're seeing him, you know, get dropped back to back, and people are saying, oh, he's getting exposed, you know, he can't get hit like that at the highest level. Like, he's already at the highest level, you know, of his weight class. You know, it's not going to get any more difficult for him than this, because, you know, that's just how it is. It's not a very, you know, deep weight class. Fighting at 122, you know, maybe moving up to 126 in the future. Like, I just don't see where, you know, anybody's really going to give him a problem besides Nakatani. But Inoue's really good. Inoue's the best out there when it comes to his weight class. And, you know, obviously, like I said, he doesn't have the resume that Pacquiao had, or even, you know, 10% of the resume that Pacquiao had. But it's not like he can control that. He can't control the people that are out there. He can't control, you know, how great his opponents are, how great the competition is. You know, it's just not the best time to, you know, have a great resume in the sport of boxing right now. That's just the truth. Like, everybody talks about, oh, you don't have a good resume, blah, blah, blah. No one really has a good resume because, you know, all the legends kind of faded. It's time for the new guys to come in and then ultimately make, you know, better resumes for themselves, because right now there's just no legends in the sport. You could talk about Canelo, you could talk about Crawford, but these guys are on the way out. It's now time for, like, the Tank Davises of the world, the T.O.s, the Ryans, the Devins, Rollies, I guess. Obviously, Bivol, Benavidez, all these tremendous fighters, and Inoue, of course, to make their resumes great just based on, you know, fighting whoever is out there. That's the most you can do at this point, where, you know, there aren't that many huge names that you could be fighting that'll really push and you know, facilitate that pound for pound status, you know, for your own title, your legacy, or whatever your goals are in the sport of boxing. But like I said, Pacquiao and Inoue are very similar, you know, in a lot of ways. They're not exactly the same. I wouldn't say like they fight the same, but the similarities that Pacquiao and Inoue do have are that they don't care about, like, getting embarrassed. These guys aren't, you know, going on social media every 5 seconds or replying to guys on Twitter and saying, you know, all right, let's send a contract, blah, blah, blah. They're actually doing it. They're actually, you know, getting in the ring. They don't care about what other people are saying because they don't want to impress other people. They're trying to impress themselves. You know, that's what separates guys like Pacquiao and Inoue. Those guys are legendary because, and they're great because they don't care about what other people think. Why would they pay attention and try to please other people as opposed to, you know, trying to, you know, appease themselves and, you know, be those kinds of fighters that are exciting for themselves. You know, like Inoue and Pacquiao, they fight for the fans. You know, they fight for the fans ultimately, but that's who they are. You know, they're modern day warriors, and that's the difference between, you know, Pacquiao, Inoue, and then guys like, you know, the guys that fought in New York. You had, obviously, you know, Devin Haney. You had Skull that fought in Saudi against Canelo. Like, and Canelo, you know, he could have done more too. He didn't lay it all out on the line. Like, he you know, initiated a lot of, you know, exchanges, but if the guy's not going to stand right in front of you, that's not boxing either. It's not gonna be a slugfest. Just because Canelo walks a guy down with his hands up, that doesn't mean that the guy has to engage. And I know that Skull ran excessively, but you can do a little bit more. You can throw more shots, try to cut the ring off a little faster, use your feet. I didn't see a sense of urgency from Canelo. That's why it's like, how hard is he really trying? Is he getting complacent? Is he getting complacent with the bag that he's getting? He's getting so much money. Does that make him not want to train as much? Does that make him not want to beat a guy like William Skull as much? If that translates into the Bud fight, you know, I think Crawford's going to win if that's the case. So, you know, getting a little bit off topic, but Inoue and, you know, Manny are definitely very identical, because Inoue clearly in his last performance against Ramon Cardenas, you could clearly see, you know, he got dropped. he was like, whatever, I'm fine. You know, he got dropped, and when he hit the canvas, he, you know, waved to his corner and his family and said, you know, I'm all good, and then handled business. That's what Manny Pacquiao does as well, you know. Like, Manny might not have gotten dropped, like, as many times within the small time span that Inoue did, but at the end of the day, it's like, who cares? Who cares? Instead of getting dropped and being embarrassed and then being afraid the rest of the fight, like some people, you know, what's the point of that? Let me get it back and then look even more impressive. It's like, this is the moment to prove that you're a great fighter that is willing to get knocked down and get back up and become stronger. That's what Inoue did, and that's what Pacquiao used to do. So those guys are different. You know, you're talking about a different breed that's very rare. So you guys better enjoy Inoue, because they don't make them like that. You know, the last one was Pacquiao, and they don't come often. So you better enjoy it. I'm just saying. But, you know, for sure, I see the similarities in the hand speed, the offensive tactics between Inoue and Pacquiao. Very talented, both moving up in weight classes and being those offensive superstars. You know, they're exciting to watch. So thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next Nabs boxing video. Peace.